What's up? What's up? What's up? Good morning, guys. How's everybody doing? It is early. It is 8 o'clock. It is raining. It is a little bit stormy outside, but I just want to say welcome to Breakfast with the Brookses. For those of you all who are just jumping in, Andrea, good to see you. Do me a favor before we even introduce ourselves. Share this out to as many people who have been through divorce. Now, some of these folks may currently be divorced. You may be on your way to divorce, or you may be remarried and you've been divorced. So, name's Glenn Peter. I'm a sitting next to the lovely, tired, light skinned with the red whipstick on.
Sheri Brooks Jr., author, speaker, relationship, and life balance coach. It's great to be with you guys this morning.
Hey guys, listen, we coming off of a real hot date night, and so we kind of tired. We old. That was a nice date night, babe. It was a Netflix night, yes.
Mm-hmm.
You old when when as soon as it starts thunderstorming, you already know what you're going to do, right? You already know you're not going
out.
Not going out.
It's raining.
You're
not going nowhere.
And it's thunderstorming, so it's violent, right? So we really quickly grabbed something to eat. We came in and then just enjoyed a couple of episodes of our girl Jessica Jones. For y'all Marvel fans, she's a monster. She needs therapy big time. But yeah, guys. So listen, we're going to talk about something today I think that is particularly needed. Sheri and I both have our share of experiences with this subject matter, and I'm hoping that it will help you guys this morning. Sidna, good morning. Good to see you. Again, if you are just tuning in, do me a favor, tag this out. Even if you're a replay viewer, do me a favor. If you're a replay viewer, put replay in the chat, but also share it out, because I think that oftentimes, even as replayers, we think, well, no one else can get this. No, absolutely. Still tag somebody. You can still share it out. If you got to copy and paste the link, do whatever you got to do. Make sure that you do what needs to be done. So really quickly, for those of you all who may not be aware of us, we created probably a year and a half ago now an online relationship academy. It's called MAPS, Marriages and Parenting Successfully. And the whole point of that relationship academy, guys, is to bring people into a closed room where they can get group coaching. And I think that has got to be the single most significant thing that I know that I've done that has helped me today. If it wasn't for my community back in the day after my first marriage, Sheri, I wouldn't have made it. I would have made it.
And I can say I've been married 2 times before Glenn, and those marriages were both done in a silo. I did not have a community. I did not have people that I could talk to. I didn't have a community of other people that were married. My friends, in all honesty, at that time, my friends that I did hang around with were single.
Yep.
For the most part, which was not good because I wasn't getting any guidance on how to do marriage right. And when we went through our challenges, it was very easy to just throw in the towel. I was also young, but it was very easy to just throw in the towel because I didn't grow up with any real examples of what a solid marriage looked like. And
right.
So I didn't have a reference point. So I like to say my first 2 marriages were an extended dating relationship.
Yeah.
And we just broke up.
Right. It was called divorce papers, but basically you broke up. Now,
right.
Speaking of break, I know our signal looks a little,
it's of the weather.
Yeah, it's thunderstorming.
You guys can bear with us.
All up and down the East Coast. Hola, Imani, ¿cómo está? How are you? It's good to see you. Eric Jones Jr. jumped in the room. Good to see you. Again, guys, do me a favor, quickly share this out. Also, if you want to catch any of the replays of Breakfast with the Brookses, you can do that over at YouTube, www.youtube.com/the CR Coach. And there you can get all of the replays that we have done. Really, I know it goes back at least to the beginning of this year. We don't have every single one of them. I don't know if it's enough space for all of that, but you can certainly get some of the ones that you may have missed. And so, Sheri, today we're going to talk a little bit about what I'm calling the journey back from divorce. 10 things you should know. And you and I have experienced divorce. Again, you talked about it twice before me. I was married for 12 years and it ended in divorce. And when I say it ended, it crashed. It was not pretty. And it was very, very, very painful. And I did not realize until years later how much that was real. It was a thing, and I needed to deal with it. Even though in my case, I was the culprit. I was the one that probably 98.9% of the marriage failing was my fault. And we're going to talk a little bit about that today, guys. But I do want to say up front, babe, we're not going to get to all 10 things today. So we're only going to deal with 5 of them today.
If we can get to 5.
If we can get to 5. We've got a couple of coaching appointments right after this. But we want to try and get through to as many as possible. What we don't get to today, we'll just pick it up next week, and we'll go from there. Craig, thanks for watching, brother. Appreciate you. Philly is representing today. So we got Imani, we got Craig from Philly. They coming in the room today, and that's exciting. So do me a favor really quickly, guys. Share this out. Tag somebody. If you know someone who is about to get a divorce, if you know someone who has gotten a divorce and maybe they're single, if you know someone who currently is married and they've experienced divorce, today is the day that we get a chance to add some value to them. So, babe, when we talk about the journey back from divorce, what do you think about in terms of steps to take back? Because when I say the journey, I want to make sure that people understand what I'm talking about. There are a lot of people who are excited that they got a divorce because it was very toxic, and I get that.
Right.
But when I talk about a journey, oftentimes I don't think that people put a lot of stock in the fact that when you were married, you were joined at a spiritual level, at a soul level, and it was more than you just saying I do. And so when you dissolve that relationship, there is a ripping, there is a tearing, there is a separation that happens that ain't fun, and it's not painful. Sometimes it takes a minute to get back from that.
Right. And it's like I said before, like when my first 2 previous marriages, we basically just broke up. I was young, I was immature. They were young, they were immature. I did not understand the gravity of what being tied to somebody else meant until years later. When the residual effects of that started to come into play. I did not go through these processes properly. Personally, when I divorced, I kind of just went on to the next thing, went on to the next relationship. I never took the time to go through these stages. And one of the first stages that we're going to talk about is actually grieving. And that's not necessarily grieving the loss per se of that person, but it's grieving the loss of the relationship. And when you get married to somebody, you make a commitment. Whether you're immature, you're young, there's something in you that says that I want to take this to the next level. And as Glenn also talked about, there's a soul tie that happens when you're joined with somebody. It's spiritual, it's emotional. There's a tie that happens, and you have to grieve that loss. Because as much as I can say, I would have said then that we just broke up and then I went on to the next thing. There was a connection, especially with my first husband. I had a child by him. So there was this connection that did not dissolve completely for years. And we went back and forth for a number of years, just trying to figure that out. It was like, what is this? What isn't this? What is this? We knew we didn't want to be together, but there was this elephant in the room, because I don't think either one of us properly grieved the loss of relationship.
Absolutely.
And it even remained tumultuous outside of the relationship between us for years, until I think we both finally grieved and were able to come to a place that, okay, this is over. This is what happened. And a big, it's several other pieces that come into that grieving process. But I think that, there are 5 stages to grief. The first is denial, where you deny that, that this is really happening. You deny that you had anything to do with it. You put blame on everything and everybody else. Then you go through the phase of anger, where you're bitter, you're angry at this person, and that's also part of that blame. You're blaming it on everybody else, and now you have all this anger, like somebody did something to you. And even if your partner was the one that may have been the one that committed the offense,
victimizer, if you will,
you put everything on them. And I want to say this: in every relationship, there are 2 people. Very, very, very rarely is it 100% all one person's fault. that 2% may have been because of how you didn't respond to something that you saw. That 2% may have been because you didn't deal with an issue. That 2% could have been because you didn't speak up. But that was, you have to own that part
right,
too.
didn't draw a boundary. We're going to get into a couple of those things, but one of the other things that I realized, good to see you, Donetta. Thanks for jumping in the room again. For those of you all who are just joining us, maybe you're catching us by replay, but we're talking about the journey back from divorce, 10 things that you should know. Today, we're going to get into the first part of this, and we'll pick it up again next week. But we talked about that stage one, or the first thing you need to know is you need to grieve the loss of the relationship. And I think a lot of people like, yeah, I'm excited, man. I've seen people who've gotten divorced and they almost throw a party because they are, quote, free. But as soon as that party is over, I promise you guys, the crazy thing is that you come down to a reality that's really, really painful. And if you're not careful and you don't go through this properly, you literally will shipwreck any relationship that you potentially may jump into. It's doomed from the jump because you've not gone through this process. So we said in the 5 stages of grief, there's denial. Sheri talked about anger. The other thing is that you will go through this bargaining stage where you're trying to make sense of it. You're bargaining not only with yourself, you may be bargaining with those around you. You may be trying to sort of this is where you rationalize things and that sort of stuff. But that's all a part of the process of grieving. And then you get into depression. Some of you guys are depressed over the loss of a relationship, but you will not acknowledge that. And so as a result, the question is, well, what's wrong? Nothing's wrong. What's wrong? I'm good. What's wrong? I said nothing's wrong. I just need to be by myself. And then you begin to come up with all these characterizations as to why that should be okay and that should be normal. And that becomes a challenge.
And that's where, for women after divorce, now I ain't dealing with no men no more. I'm just done. I'm done. And for guys, I ain't getting married.
Right. Like you can hang that up, brother.
That's part of that whole grieving process. So that's normal for you to go through that phase, but you can't stay there.
Right.
That's the problem when you stay there.
Right. Craig, you stupid. Craig talking about hold on for a second. Hold on. Y'all out here, y'all throwing haymakers. Let me put my mouthpiece back in. Y'all swinging this one. Yeah, we coming for the fences, Craig, because here's the problem, Craig. There are people, and this will mess you up, brother. Get your mouthpiece ready. Get it back in your mouth, because I'm coming with another one. I'm just telling you. But there are people who are actually remarried who didn't go through these steps, and as a result, their marriage today is crap.
Right.
It's not working, not because they don't love one another, but because they still are connected to the person that they were married to before. And we see it all the time. And so I'm telling you guys, if you really want to,
it's what's Erykah Badu, the song Bag Lady?
Yeah.
Where you going with all them bags? When you bringing all that baggage with you in another relationship, proper for the past relationship, and you bring that baggage with you in the new relationship.
I'm telling you right now. So we're talking about when we still dealing with stage number 1, right? I told y'all we weren't going to get through all of this today, but in stage number 1, we said, look, in order to journey back from divorce, 10 things that you should know. The first thing is you need to grieve the relationship. And when that happens, you'll go through the 5 stages of grief: denial,
anger, bargaining, depression. And the last stage of grief is acceptance.
Right.
So when you actually come to terms with, okay, this is it is
over. What it is.
It is what it is. This is what happened.
Yep.
And I can move on now.
Right. Absolutely.
He said headgear is now. So that's what happens when I'm tired.
Right. Sheri don't have no cut cards, right? She going in for the.
It's all with love, y'all. This is all with love. It's with love.
He said, I didn't know it was gonna be full contact. I would have got myself together. I feel you, bro. It's all love. Guys, listen, again, we're talking about the 10 things that you should know when you're trying to journey back from divorce. And number 2 is you need to identify. And when I say identify, what I'm really talking about is identifying what the real problem really was, like for real. This is where that self-awareness becomes critical. Because for me, I had to identify that, Glenn, this came to an abrupt halt, not because your wife did anything, but because you didn't do anything. I'm going to say it again. Not because your wife didn't do anything wrong, but because you didn't do anything right. And I can almost say that 98.9% of my relationship, it dissolved because of me. I had problems. I was selfish. I was a prideful individual. You couldn't tell me truth. I couldn't speak truth to myself, let alone to you. And I certainly couldn't hear it from other people. I lived in a vacuum. I was a hider. I didn't. No one really knew the real me. I just could keep going down this list that I had to work through, and it was therapy and all kinds of different stuff. You looking at me like, oh my goodness.
I'm glad you dealt with all that before we get hooked up.
Right.
No, but
I was a mess on wheels.
Right.
But I had to identify what the real problem was. And when you say that, Sheri, let me say this: had I not identified that when you and I met, it wouldn't have worked.
Right. And the same is true for me. Even though I didn't go through those stages right after my first 2 marriages dissolved, I went through a season, of self awareness and focusing on myself before Glenn and I actually got together. And so I did get to go through those phases over a number of years before I got into our marriage. But it took me a long time because I didn't do it right after the relationships ended. And so I carried it from the first marriage, I carried it into the second marriage. And then after that, I was in a long-term relationship. I carried it into that relationship. And so I didn't do it in the right order. And so I carried that mess with me. Sorry, first marriage, long-term relationship, then second marriage.
Yeah, you had to get your relationship straight.
It was confusing.
It was a confusing mess.
But the point is that I did take that time to do that self-identification. And this is not about you necessarily identifying. It's acknowledging what really happened, but it's not about you just blaming the other person. This is about identifying your part.
Yes.
In what happened.
Yes.
Focusing on what is it that I could have done different.
Yep.
What is it that, what are areas that I could grow in, that I could, hopefully be able to avoid being in that same type of situation again. And sometimes that's, me seeing what I see and acknowledging it. Because a lot of times we'll see red flags when we're dating somebody. But he's so cute, girl, and he got all this money, and he gonna take care of me. He be all right. I ain't gonna worry about that. I ain't gonna worry about that. Then you get married.
I'm gonna grow him up. I'm gonna train him. I'm gonna work that out.
He's not a puppy. You can't train a person.
Hey, Craig, we went back into full contact mode, brother.
You can't train somebody.
Andre,
you'll hear married people say that.
Right.
It's not literal.
Right.
You're not literally training a person.
Right. You can, little guys.
He's not a puppy. I'm not going to take out the newspaper and bop you on your nose when you don't do what I want you to do.
And make you stop pooping in the house. That's not going to happen.
You have to acknowledge those things that you see and deal with them. And often what happens, in all seriousness, what happens in a lot of relationships when they do dissolve a marriage, when marriages end, is that as people look back, they'll say, well, I saw that, but I never addressed it.
Look,
I saw that was an issue. Exactly. But I never, I figured it would just go away.
And that's what Andrea is saying.
We ignore it. Right. We ignore it because we like, well, they gonna get, they saved now and they gonna grow up.
They love Jesus or whatever their new say. They got a new job, whatever their new.
It's gonna change, and it may change for a season, but you have to recognize those things and address them when I see it. And addressing them doesn't necessarily mean that the relationship doesn't go on. It's you having a conversation. Hey, I noticed that you do this, this, and this.
Yep.
I have a problem with that.
And it's called Drawing Boundaries. I can't wait till our Fixing Broken Fences video series comes out. It's almost finished. But that video series, and we're working on a workbook and a whole bit to it, guys, because the whole point of that is to show you when and where to draw those lines. And some of you guys have lines that need to be drawn early on. And the problem is that you see what you see, but you don't say what you see. We're talking about journeying back from divorce. Some of you guys are married again, and you've not made the proper journey back from your first divorce. Right. And many times the person or the spouse, whether you're a man married to a woman or a woman married to a man, the problem is that they're paying for what your former spouse did because you never dealt with those issues. And so we said that of those 10 things this morning, number one, you have to grieve. You have to grieve the relationship. If you don't, I promise you, it's going to come back to bite you. Secondly, we talked about is that you have to identify. And when we say identify, we're talking about identifying what the real problem was. Was it you? Was it something you did? Was it something you didn't do? Was it something that and we talked about again, that you failed to draw a line. I can honestly say that my ex-wife, God bless her heart, I've apologized a gazillion times since those days. We're friends today. And there are times where I'll have this thought, and it's been 20 years. I had to say, you know what? I wasn't right. I apologize. Did you? And we joke about it almost. It's like, no, we good. We good. Because at that particular point, I'm still kind of sometimes seeing where I've messed up or I screwed something up. And if you're not careful, you will take that into every relationship that you go into. And the next one that we say is that this is once you've identified the problem, now you're going to have to work. Now you're going to have to put in work. I want y'all to put that in the chat. Work. Everybody who's listening, do me a favor, put the word work in the chat. Just put the word work. You are going to have to do work. It is not good enough to grieve it. It's not good enough to identify it and don't do nothing about it.
Just say, oh, I realized
yeah, I get my bad. Right. Like, so if you're the offender, it's, wow, I did do that. I'm so sorry. See, I'm sorry is not good enough.
Right.
I want y'all to hear that. I'm sorry is not good enough. And the reason why, and my friend Duran Cloud used to always say, we would professional feel badders. You would say I'm sorry, and you would feel bad, but you stay stuck on that place of I'm a pro when it comes to feeling bad. So all you do is say, my bad, I'm sorry, I identified it, and I'm. But if you do not put in work, guys, and when we talk about work, Sheri, what are we really talking about?
It's working on you. And one thing, I just want to go back real quick. When we talk about identifying things, a lot of times we don't address things or we don't instill boundaries because we never learned how to do that. Mm-hmm. And this is where that work comes in. So you realize as you go through that identification stage that, there were some things you didn't address.
Right.
So now you work on how do I become the type of person that I can confront?
Right.
How do I now become the type of person if I was dishonest in the past relationship, if I was the offender? What do I need to do? What is it inside of me that I need to work on so that I don't do that to somebody again?
Correct.
That, I'm able to be loyal, that I'm able to be committed in a relationship. I start working on me.
Give me a quick way of how you do that, babe. You notice that you have a problem with speaking truth. How do you begin doing work on that?
I may need to get a coach. I may need to get a counselor. I may need to do some research, get some books and start reading up on how am I codependent? What is going on with me?
Oh, that's good.
That's causing me to not be able to speak up when I see things that need to be addressed.
That's good.
Am I an enabler? It's doing that type of work, really investing in myself.
Yeah.
Getting some help to help me deal with that so that I don't repeat the same patterns again. Because the thing is, whatever your 1% in the relationship that failed, whatever that 1% that you may have been responsible for, if you don't deal with that 1%, you're going to repeat the same pattern.
So that 1% will become 100% in the next relationship. I want y'all to hear that. That 1% that you identify, well, it wasn't my fault. It wasn't my problem. And you very well may be the case. My ex-wife can say that, 98.9% of that relationship was that joker's fault. And she would be accurate in saying that. The problem is that, and I'm grateful that she is now married and her husband are friends of ours and we kick it on a regular basis. I'm grateful that our relationship has grown to that place, but she had to do the work on the part that she knew to be true. And I promise you, her current husband don't get away with what I would have gotten away with because she sees now. She's able to speak up and speak truth and say, wait a minute, there's a problem with this, that, or the third. And so if you do not do that work, you will find yourself jammed up because now you're now messing with the very thing you can control.
Once a doormat doesn't mean you have to always be a doormat.
Please say that again.
Once a doormat does not mean you have to always be a doormat.
Once you do that work, guys, you become better, and then you become a different person. And so I'm telling you right now, if you want to work through that, you're going to have to do work. Good to see Tammy jumped in the room. Joy, good to see you, sis. I'm glad that you guys could hang through it. We're talking about and not everybody, we do understand, is in this place. But if you're in a place where you've been divorced before, there is a journey back from divorce. And we're going to go over today the 10 things that you should know about what that journey should consist of. For my replayers, you just jumping in the room. Again, we said number 1 was grief. We said that there were 5 stages of grief. You need to go back and listen to the replay completely to get that. I went to number 3 first. My bad. Number 2 is identify, right? Identify. It's important to reflect on what the real problem was. Many times you're going to need help in this stage because you're not going to be able to see into your blind spots. Number 3, we talked about just now, is doing work. You've got to put in the work. And once you get that help, if it's a coach, if it's a mentor, for me, it was a therapist. I was hurt. I had some deep-seated issues that needed to be worked out in therapy. I couldn't put a game plan and execute nothing, is what coaches do for you, because I literally was stuck in my pain from the past and things that I grew up in that shaped my current day and my future at that time. So you're going to have to do work. Number 4, and we're not going to get to all of them today, but number 4 is that you're going to have to embrace it. We're talking about the journey back from divorce. This is going to be a journey, guys. You have to embrace it. It is a marathon, not a sprint.
Right. When you embrace it, it's you're coming to the realization that, okay, this is what happened. Was my part. This is where, I've been able to, these are areas that I need to work on to be able to grow, to be able to move on. And you're able to then start getting over it. Yeah. This is where you start the emotional part of it starts to now dwindle. Yeah. Because you're dealing with reality at this point. This is not about all of the emotion of the situation. This is you come into peace with things. You know, because you're able to own your part and realize it wasn't all them. And you're even able to look at them and realize, okay, even if 99% of it was them, you're able to see that they're a broken person. That there's something wrong with them. This wasn't personal. They didn't sit up at night and say, I'm going to screw up your life. Yeah. They had some issues. They had some things that they need to deal with. And you're able to have some empathy towards them and realize that, they didn't do this to me on purpose. No,
I love that, because to me, this is where, when you're at this stage of the journey and you can embrace it, this is where it really, really helps your co-parenting situation. If you have children as a result of that marriage, this part of embracing is the place that people get to when you can now see them being able to work through their issues with their co-parents. And Andrea, you hit the nail dead on the head. Hurt people. Right. And the problem is that when you don't embrace those things and recognize that is a reality, you never can have empathy for the person. And therefore you can't work through anything, because quite frankly, they're the enemy. And why would I do that? Right. Does that make sense? And so when we're talking about embracing it, guys, I want you guys to understand that your children are watching you. And I think that many of us forget the fact that them little jokers are sponges. And they watching you, and they're soaking up every single thing you do. And they're looking at you, taking cues from you on how to navigate through their stuff. Right. But they're doing this, and they're 5, they're 6, they're 7 years old. You have no idea that they're paying attention. But here's how you'll know that they were paying attention to you. That when they are 25 years old doing the same craziness that you're doing, or they're navigating through their challenges the way you did it, you taught them that. I had to own that I taught my son how to not feel or not to address certain things. And so I had to reteach him. So it's in this embracing stage, guys, that you literally are able to help yourself go through that. And the last one we're going to talk about is to discover. Now, today, we're only going to we're going to stop right here on 5. We'll deal with the next 5 next week. But I want to talk a little bit about this part of the journey when we're talking about discovering Sheri. Some people, when they go through a difficult marriage and it ends in divorce, unfortunately, many times, especially if they were married for any length of time, excuse me, they often, when that marriage is dissolved, they often lose who they are.
Right. Because a lot of people, when you get married, that becomes your whole identity. You know, especially this is really more prevalent with women. Our whole identity becomes being that wife, being that mother. You lose yourself, and because you dive head first into this relationship, and that becomes your identity. And if you're married for any length of time and you're operating that way, you lose yourself. You lose, your desires, your wants, your things that you're passionate about. And when the relationship ends, you're like sitting there like this lump on a log, and it's like, what am I going to do with my life now? I don't feel like I don't have a role.
You see how she's stuck? It's like I don't. And that's literally how you look.
And so it's like you have to, at this phase, you have to rediscover who you are.
Yeah, I probably should have put rediscover.
Yeah, rediscover your value, rediscover, your purpose.
Absolutely.
Because we oftentimes put so much into our relationships, and I believe you should put yourself into your relationship. But the thing is, number one, I want to back up for a quick second. When you get married, typically it's two broken people getting married. The goal is for those two broken people to be on a journey to getting healthy. As individuals, when you get together. So very rarely do you have two completely healthy people. I mean, that's great if you can get two healthy people together when they get married. But if you're both broken, the goal is that you both are already on a journey to getting healthy.
Right.
As individuals.
And if you're not, you get on a journey to get healthy.
Because what happens when divorce happens is that you had two unhealthy people get together and somebody stays unhealthy.
Yep.
And that leads to divorce, or both of you stay unhealthy. There's no growth. And so when you go through that journey, now that the marriage has ended, if you never were on that journey to getting healthy, now you're this broken person that you feel like you have no significance, you have no role. You have to rediscover, you have to go through healing, you have to rediscover who you are. There's a lot of work that you got to put in to be able to get back to who you were before.
Because sometimes you were never that person. Right. Let me say it this way, Sheri. And I hear you, Andrea. She said, I'm in complete shock. No, I get it. Our old friend, and I'm sensitive to the things that you've had to go through, and you and the boys. But here's what I do know. Listen very carefully, guys. Oftentimes in this place of discovery, right? Or I should have actually put rediscover. You are rediscovering what was there,
right? So
that you can put in work from that point. Some of you guys were not healthy from the jump. And so when you get into a marriage and the marriage becomes very toxic and then it begins to dissolve and eventually it implodes, you are sitting there with an unhealthier person.
Right.
Not an unhealthy person, because you already were unhealthy. You were already broken, but you're even more broken now. Does that make sense? And so it becomes painful to go back and try and figure out where all these million pieces. I don't know if you ever shattered a glass where, you can pick up the big pieces, but them little fibers, you tell everybody, look, don't walk over here. Don't walk over there. Don't walk over there.
It can take you weeks to get all of it
all that stuff up. And even once you've swept it up, you really find weeks later, you find a little chip of glass way over another side. And that's what it looks like when you have come into a relationship unhealthy. Guys, I want to really just say this. In order to get through this part, you need community.
Right.
You can't do this by yourself. This is a cleanup job that takes a community to help you do that. And I really want to encourage you, even if you are single, if you don't have children, come be a part of the MAPS community. And the reason why is because the community is there, and the community is made up of people who've been there and done that. So we've got ladies who are single in our community who've been divorced. Maybe they're raising their children. Maybe they're co-parenting. Some of them are dating. We have people who are trying to figure it out. We have people who have estranged marriages where they are literally in the community, but they're separated. And the community is helping them to literally navigate through that place and get to that place of wholeness and health so that they don't find themselves continuing to mess up further relationships.
Right. And I also want to say, if you've been say you weren't married, but you were in a long-term relationship with somebody and that relationship ended, you still need to go through these same stages. Because when you've been in a relationship with somebody for an extended period of time, you know, it's a mini marriage.
Yep, absolutely. I don't care how you slice it, whether it's common law or whatever it is.
Whatever you want to call it. You know, you in a relationship with somebody for 3 years.
Yep.
You know, when you were in a
y'all know y'all living like you done been to the courthouse.
Right. Y'all playing house, but y'all didn't say I do.
Right.
You know, you still, if that relationship ends, you still will go through these same phases.
You 100% correct.
You need to go through the same stuff to be able to build yourself back up, to prepare yourself before you go into another relationship.
So we want to encourage you guys right here at the end of this thing. Lisa, thanks for jumping in. Go back, listen to the replay, listen to all of it. I want you guys to share this out and tag it. We're talking about the journey back from divorce. 10 things you should know. This is not just for people who have been divorced and that are remarried, but this is for them. This is for people who are single and are currently divorced. This is for people who are marching towards marriage and they're finding themselves trying to avoid divorce.
Or if you're dating somebody that was divorced before, you need to be able to look at them and see, have they gone through this? Have they dealt with, have they done this work?
Have they grieved the loss of their ex?
Did they get to do some work? Because you don't want them coming into the relationship with you with all this baggage. Right.
Did they identify what really happened, or are they in a place of blame? Have they worked out the issues that they discovered that they can control? Did they do, or did they put in work? You're dating a person, y'all ain't even married yet,
right?
And you are seeing that these things because this person's been married. Did they embrace it? Have they embraced the process? Have they gotten to the place to where they can now? And you know this, when you're the person you're dating can't speak to their co-parent with respect, you got a problem. I want y'all to hear that. When the person that you're dating, if they're a person that was married at once before, and they have no respect for their co-parent,
I ain't talking to her.
They have no respect, and it's all her. Right. Guys, I'm gonna tell you, pump brakes. Please pump the brakes.
Right. When you ask them what happened in their relationship, it was
bad. They just stepped out.
They don't own any part. They don't admit that they played.
That's a problem.
Like I said, there's very rarely is there a relationship where it's 100% one person's part.
Absolutely.
Even if their part was only 1%, they should be able to own that 1% and say, well, you know, I realized I saw early on that this person had some issues and I just ignored it. And then they did this. But it should not be, well, they was just crazy. They was just this, they.
Yeah. No, and guys, I'm going to tell you right now, when Sheri says that should be the first thing out their mouths. It should be, you know what? Yeah, she's bitter, but in my case, it would have been like, but I made that. I did that. Mm-hmm. No, I'm on a date. Mm-hmm. And this really happened. When you and I were dating, I didn't have those kinds of, it was her fault. She's crazy. She's a lunatic. Any of those kinds of. I came into our relationship owning the fact. That's because I was already on this journey. I had already come to the place where I was able to embrace, I was a pretty screwed up individual. And I'm sorry for that. I'm working on it. But yeah, she got some problems. Because I kind of helped create it.
Right.
And so again, the last thing we said is that the next journey or next phase of that journey should be a place of discovery where you begin to find yourself. Whoever you are, you find you. And that you begin to now be able to walk in a place where you're really comfortable in your own skin. Mm-hmm. And Sheri, we're going to leave with this. I think that when you get to the place where you are comfortable with you and that you're okay with you, flaws and all, excuse me, and you're okay, and you can say, you know what, this is who I am. This is what you get. There is no more. I'm putting my best foot forward. I am just going to put my foot forward. When you can just listen to me, guys, when you can step into a relationship, not putting your quote best foot forward, but just putting your foot forward and saying, this is who I am. That's when you've truly discovered the real you. And you're okay with that, flaws and all. And when a person, it's not the arrogant, this is who I am, who I say. No. It's none of that bravado with that. It is literally,
this is me.
This is me. This is me. And I've got this to work on it, but this is who I am. And I'm okay with knowing that. I'm not okay necessarily with staying that person, but I am okay with who I've discovered, it becomes absolutely critical. Sydney, you're 1,000% correct. Sydney said it is a paramount to have community. Guys, we're going to get out of here for today. We've got a couple of coaching sessions that we're trying to get out of the way for. But again, if you have enjoyed this, do me a favor, share it out with somebody. We'll be back next week. We're going to pick up part 2, actually, of the journey back from divorce. We gave you 5 things today, and I'm hoping that next week we can finish up strong with the other 5. But at the end of the day, guys, we all need some help. We all need some help. Y'all go get healthy. Be good.
Have a great day.
We'll talk soon.
Bye, guys.